Sir? Sir, are you there?
No, I'm not.
Okay, since class has started, sir, I can ask you a question.
Another one that you just did.
Yes, another one.
All
I didn't
right.
ask permission to ask this one. Anyways, so sir,
Yes.
is lunchtime included in the 40 hours in the work week?
You know, the funny thing about that, it only matters when you are working at the national minimum wage level. The flexi-time legislation does speak about that, but unless you're working outside of flexible working hours relationships, then it is solely determined by the contract.
Oh.
Yeah. Minimum Wage Act speaks to people working 40 hours, and it usually means excluding a lunch period. Yes.
Excluding.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I read
Yes.
I read an article in the Observer saying that it is included in the 40 hours. I really wanted to know which one was correct.
Depends on who wrote it.
Okay.
Yeah. Who wrote it and why? Because if it's in the contract, it's in the contract.
No, but if you're making a policy for an organization and not necessarily contracted workers, how you treat with that?
Say again?
If you're making a policy for an organization.
Yeah, but by and large, the norm is to include a period of lunch in the 40.
Okay.
Right.
Sorry,
but there's nothing.
half an hour.
But in any event, remember though that the 40-hour work week is not regulated by any statute except the Minimum Wage Act, separate and apart from the Flexi-Time Act.
Okay.
Right. So if you decide you're going to form a contract with your employer for a 40-hour work week, right? That 40-hour work week may or may not include the 1 hour per day lunchtime.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, we're starting with questions, but it's all right because it's a question class for the first period anyway, until I think that you all got it. Right. Or did I just change something? Okay, this way we are. Good. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. No, it's evening. How are you?
Okay. Good evening.
Yes. Welcome, everybody else more join.
Good evening, sir.
And I'm watching the screen and to see who answers. So your names pop up here. Yes, good. So let's do this again. Yes, Marsha, you always answer. What's this? All right, good. So let me do this again. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
All right. All right. Well, glad to hear, man.
Evening, sir.
Yashika.
Afternoon, sir. Well,
You made a poorly greeting just now. What's here?
Evening, sir.
Yeah, and I know you're at home this time.
No, I'm not. I soon leave, sir.
Oh, you're at work?
Yes, I am.
Because I know this time you sound like you're stable. Yes.
All right.
Somebody, it's, you know, language must be unambiguous. And so somebody said to a child, are your parents in a stable relationship? And they say, yes, them live in a barn. Yeah. You got that one, yeah? All right, so are we ready? So let us rewind a little bit so we can go forward. I am going to be expecting the interactive questions as we interrogate the case study. It is very instructive. After that, I'm going to continue with some additional notes as we go through additional slides. So redundancy, let me remind you, redundancy under the Employment Termination and Termination Redundancy Payment Act, ETIPA, is something which comes as a result of a dismissal. All redundancies are dismissals. It has to be a case where the employer dismisses you. So when we talk about a post being redundant, etc., that is a rule of thumb. It's a rule of thumb, just like when we were looking at unionization, where we say 50% plus one. It's a rule of thumb. It's one way of investigating whether or not there really is a case made or a case to be made. Generally speaking, the test as to whether or not there is a redundancy, what you do is you check and see whether or not the functions are still being performed and the posts are being called by other things. But that's just a test to see if the premise for the dismissal was really a redundancy. Good. So let me say this again. For a redundancy situation to arise, it must be that there was a dismissal in the first place. And that's either an inferred dismissal or a very direct dismissal. And redundancy is the only time where a worker can take the initiative and say, I want this to end, but it must happen under certain conditions. But a redundancy has to be a dismissal, because even when the employee has the discretion to say, employer, I want to be made redundant, the fact is the employer is the one who ultimately carries out the act, right? Even so, follow me here, right? Follow me here. Even where the worker has the right to be made redundant under certain conditions, which we look at in a bit, he still cannot dismiss himself. The employer has to do it. It must be a positive act of commission by the employer. All right. So let's go forward. So let's rewind to the case study that we were supposed to have been discussing a little bit more. So let me read again. On Monday, May 15, 2021, I don't know whether or not that's a real date. I don't think May 15 was a Monday. Doesn't matter. Workers at PMC Limited received a circular advising the company had been sold with effect from April 15, 2021, and a new owner is in place. The following are elements in the memo. 1, all workers are being offered the same terms and conditions of employment. Workers in the Portmore branch will be relocated to the Stony Hill branch and Stony Hill complex rather. Marketing and public relations are being merged. The PR manager will maintain her seniority in regard to pay, other emoluments and pension. She will, however, report to the marketing manager. Good. So, first point for a discussion. The workers, so here, bullet point 1. All the workers are being offered the same terms and conditions of employment. I want you to answer me as to whether or not a redundancy situation on prima facie exists. Go ahead. First volunteer.
Would say yes, it exists, sir, because the act states that once a previous employer has ceased operation, even though another company is taking over, you have to make the post redundant in order for the worker to transition to the other employer.
All right, that's what you are told.
Yeah.
That's what you understand. Hello?
Yes, sir. That's what I understand from it.
All right, okay. All right, another taker, somebody else by name, please identify yourself.
I'm on the floor, sir.
Huh?
Yashiko.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I would say have a conversation with with the staff if they agree to go with the new company, then a new contract. If they don't, then you can make that position redundant.
Okay. Sophia. Montague. She signed now, but she not talk. All right. Latanya.
Sorry, you said that Tanya or Titania?
Lat.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming it's the same business. The nature of the business hasn't changed, so it really hasn't ceased to exist. But it's a new employer. So I'm not sure if that would be redundancy, because they said they were offered the same terms and conditions of service.
That's all right, Latia. Believe me, I understand that too. My God.
So and I'm really not too sure, sir, to be honest.
That's your little one, Latte?
Yes, sir.
Girl or boy?
Girl, sir.
Okay. That's 3 years old or 2?
3, sir.
Yeah, I don't, well, I can fully empathize. I think you can understand. So it's, yeah. You know, and in the greater scheme of things, that's really what matters most. So I just manage it. That's all. I mean, I take no offense to it at all. Absolutely. These are adverse conditions. All right, cool. So I'm hearing you, but not quite sure. Let me get another opinion. Tremaine.
Greetings, sir.
Yeah. But I tell you, you have to lose. You lost some weight where they call it 2 main.
Actually gained.
I don't think you want a name, right?
No.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So for me, all workers are being offered the same terms and conditions of service. What I understand from redundancy, there a payment must be made out to the persons who are made redundant. So if you just change the term, you tell me that I'm redundant, but you give me back another contract, but no payment was made. Was I made redundant, or just a change in the contract?
Right. So why would I give you a payment anyway?
Sorry?
Why would I give you a payment anyway?
Why would you give me a payment if you're just giving me a new contract?
All right. So make a note of this. It's not in I didn't write this down. So make a note before we move on. So let me give you some notes. The legal philosophy. You all writing?
Yes, sir.
Right. The legal philosophy behind redundancy or severance payment is that a person's job is real property. Like land or a house. It is property in which an individual has invested therefore in removing this property from the individual, a compensation has to fall in place for the equity which the individual has built. In this property. All right, so let's stop right there. So follow me here. So what redundancy says to you, what redundancy is a redundancy payment is a compensation for the fact that you built up your equity in this thing. Like you lived on a piece of land for a while and you lived there legally, or you lived in a house, you're the occupant of the house, etc. And you were legally occupying the house. And then somebody says, well, you know, you're going to have to leave the house. Having left the house and occupied it for a while and having invested deeply in the house and you've built upon, you've maintained the house, you've put on things on it as well, and you've kept it from going into ruins. Yeah? You have a piece of land. You have kept the land free from vermin, etc. And you are legally on it, most important, right? It's not a case where you decided to squat at your own risk. You are placed on the land and then the man says, no, well, you know what, we're taking this land back from you. All right. Having left this land, you're putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in the land. So therefore, you must get something back out of it. And that's what redundancy is about. So I want you to follow me here. People are given new terms and conditions or the same terms and conditions of service. Explain to me now, Tremaine, and anybody else who shares that view, what the workers would have lost. With me? I'm listening. I don't want to call no volunteers now. Come now.
I don't think they lost anything. I don't think Debbie speaking.
Yeah, go. Yes, Debbie. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, sir. Thank you. I don't think they lost anything because they still have the job. They have the same terms and conditions of the service that they had before. The only thing that has happened is that the owner of the company has changed. And I'm thinking businesses change ownership at different points in time. I don't know, maybe this is not how I'm to think about it, but I'm saying to myself that you're employed to the organization and not the owner personally.
Mm-hmm.
So if it is that the only thing that has changed is who has reins and nothing else with relation to your employment contract has changed, and it's not redundancy.
Mm-hmm. All right, so here is, are you listening?
Yes, sir.
So here is an interesting point. So somebody raised it last week, that PMC Limited still exists as a company, right?
Yes.
And if PMC exists as a company, then what does it mean? Does it mean that you have, there has been any redundancy at all?
Sir, I think there's no redundancy. That I don't think there were any. I don't know. I'm agreeing with Debbie and what everybody else said. I mean, all terms. I mean, they just offer the same terms.
Yeah. Follow me here now. Hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Somebody raised a point last week that PMC Limited still exists.
Yeah.
Right? A limited liability company. It has not changed, right? It's so they are still employed to PMC. And PMC is the employer. And therefore, the employer PMC hasn't changed.
So, sir, is it that essentially we being the company, we're taking away the equity that the worker has invested?
No, because if you give people a continuation of the terms and conditions of service, it means that you're also continuing the assets and liabilities and all and obligations to the workers.
Sir?
So in other words, so if you have a new owner and says same terms and condition of employment, it means that there is a continuation. But follow me here, let's go back to the beginning, right up to the top. Somebody made that point last week, a very important one. The workers at PMC received a circular advising that the company had been sold and a new owner is in place. The argument was, a reasonable argument too, was that PMC is a limited liability company. So therefore, at all material times, PMC is the employer. Okay, PMC is the employer. Now, that is what is being argued by that one person. So if PMC continues to be the employer, why then would there be a circular that the company workers are being offered the same terms and conditions of service?
Sir,
You understand what I'm saying? Follow me. You work at Scotiabank, you work at Scotiabank. Scotiabank continues to exist. You work at JNC, you work JN, you still, right? You still work at JN. So what is being argued here is that there that this in itself might even be a redundancy, because if they're still are employed to this this thing, then why are you saying this here? Am I making any sense?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, sir. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it, but I see the link that you're trying, but that's the link that you're making.
Yes. Real situation, eh? All right, but I went good because yeah, go ahead, please.
Where I used to work, we had a similar situation where it was Chargy, Kingston Industrial Garage, still Chargy, but they changed owners. And what they did was, it was the same terms and contracts when we transitioned, but they made us redundant. They paid us off, and we started a
Yeah. So you had a redundancy
with the person,
situation.
still KIG, still named KIG, but different. Yeah, so we had a redundancy situation, but it was the same terms when the new owners took us back.
Is KIG a limited liability company?
I don't know.
Or is it's a limited liability company, but without any shares, a private company, what do you call it, a family business?
I think initially it was a family business. I don't know what happened after.
Right. Right. And you see, even though it is limited, if it's not a company with shares, etc., right? That's on the stock market, that's traded openly, then it may raise those kinds of questions. But I want to think, yes, go ahead. Yes,
Chantal.
go ahead. Yes, Chantal.
I'm trying to understand. All right. So before last week, when you were talking about redundancy, you were saying, and you said it again, that all redundancies are dismissals.
All, yes.
You gave 4 reasons for dismissals.
Mm-hmm.
You were the cessation of business, intention to cease business, reduction.
That's the same one, yeah.
Right, and occupational injury. Those are not happening here. It's the same. The business is not ceasing. Everything is the same here with PMC.
Stop for a moment. The statute doesn't give you that discretion. The statute says that a termination takes place when there is the death of the individual employer, or there is a sale. So if you sell the business, there is in fact a dismissal.
Oh.
Under the Act.
Under the Act. And I was thinking too, so that
the sale in itself brings the contract to an end. Follow me.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine? I have a contract with you. I don't have a contract with your snotty-nosed son. I have a contract with you. My contract certainly doesn't continue past the grave. I wouldn't want to have a contract with you after you're dead. What's a laka? Oh, you're going to decide to come and enforce it in my sleep? For those of you who believe in ghosts. Yeah. No, but the law is very clear that a termination or a cessation of business is deemed to take place when you have sold the business, which is open, clearly so, because the contract comes to an end with you and the other people. Or after if you have not sold the business, of course, you die. You die, it is clear. Or, of course, if you decide that you're just going to close the business. So separate and apart from when you're closing down the business or you're intending to close the business down, if you have sold it, follow me here, if you have sold the business, haven't you, the employer, ceased operations? Shanti?
Yes, sir, you have, because you're not there anymore. You can't enforce anything.
Exactly, right. So you give it up. So so somebody said, Gio, welcome to the car parts business. Boy, you know, me sell it now. Yes, you close business down? No, but me done the business. Me done with that. Yeah, you're done with it. Somebody continue with him. So why me tell you the truth and the people them keep the things too much, yeah, man. I couldn't manage. Furthermore, me at 60 and now I'm tired. One can spend the rest of my time I drink rum. All right. And those are actual conversations.
But my thing, sir, is that
yes,
the employees were told this in May, but this happened from April. So that means they were still working. So it wouldn't, the terms and they wouldn't have changed anything. They would still have been working on their contract with their contract with the previous employer. So how can it be redundancy if it's still working on the same contract? It's not like anything changed. You even hear about this a month after.
Sir, did a dismissal even take place?
Or the way how it was done wasn't the correct way? I don't know.
that the sale could have said that they're not handing over until that point?
Oh, is it
Hold on a
unjustified
question.
dismissal?
No, we're not even unjustified yet. Justified. I'm saying to so you think that you could be dismissed and still be working and not know? That makes sense?
I can't be dismissed if I don't know.
Huh? But hold on. Let me ask you a question. Huh? So let us say that you signed a contract. Are you following me?
Yes, sir, following you.
All right. Let's keep it simple. You have been engaged by Mr. John McIntosh. John McIntosh is a person who's ill, and he says that, he he doesn't have a lot of time on the earth. He's 80 years old and not having good health, right? And he is employing you, Chantal Wilson, as his what's the name of the place? The chief housekeeper, right? As a chief housekeeper, you have responsibility for all staff, including the butler and the gardener. He has a nurse, right, who takes care of him, who is responsible for the cleaning of the room, etc. Right? Good. Anyway, so Master John is there, and you haven't seen Master John for a while, for about a week. And Master John actually died last week. Nobody tells you that Master John died. But Master John's son, of course, lives in the house as well, and you continue to work. But Master John is dead.
Is Master John paying me?
But you're still being paid, yes?
Okay.
But Master John is dead. Because in any event, there's a standing order that comes from his account for years, right?
Okay.
And it goes straight to your account. So there's a standing order that comes from Master John's account that goes straight into yours. So every month on the 24th or 25th, or the day or the last working day before the 25th, if the 25th falls on a weekend, you get your payment in your thing. It comes, right? That happened for the 10 years that you were working. But now you don't see Master John, but Master John is a public figure, and nobody wants to tell the public that he's dead just yet. So Master John has been dead a week. You continue to work. Is that unlikely? You're in the same house.
It's quite likely, yes.
And furthermore, it's a large property anyway, right? Good. Because the quarters that you actually sleep in, and it's not where Master John lives. So you were working for this dead man against your knowledge. The man's dead. You're being paid, of course. But there's no way you can say that you were not dismissed, because you were dismissed the day that he died. You might not have known. Make sense now?
It does, but
what,
you're
Chantal?
saying that's redundancy.
Huh?
You're saying I would have been redundant?
Why wouldn't you be redundant?
Because I'm still getting paid.
But let me ask, did the employer dismiss you because of the ceased operation?
Well, because he died, so.
All right, so there's only one man I know who has been able to do that, and it actually took him 2 more days anyway, if you believe. Right? The only Jesus I know in history was died and continued his business afterwards. Not so?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you die. The law doesn't give anybody the discretion there. It says that a cessation of business occurs when the person dies. So take that discretion away from yourself. So if you're dead, employer dies, there is under the law a cessation of business at the end of the contract and for purposes of redundancy. Remember, you're made, the dismissal is deemed to be for redundancy if A, there's a cessation of business shut down, him dead, the business must lock, right? Him stop working. 2, there's an intention to close down, right? Sorry, there's an intention to, which is also the close down, but also whether you intend to or you have reduced the requirement for labor. You know, you have COVID pandemic now, you realize now that you no longer need 100 workers, you need now 50, so you send home 50. Right, good. COVID again. COVID has caused massive illnesses in the workplace. This is a lab. And people have got so ill as a consequence of COVID that they have morbidities afterwards and they're unable to return to work. But they picked up the virus from in the lab, right? Injury on the job, maybe, I don't know. So you pick up an occupational illness, or you get injured on the job. You were a backpacker, right? And then you're picking up one of the bags, and then one of the bags tore open, and you got one of the bottles falling on your foot and breaking several of your metatarsals to such a point that you can't put any weight on it again, and you just can't stand on your feet ever again for the entire day. Occupational illness. All right. I mean, occupational injury. Now, back to this thing here. So we are still trying to interrogate whether or not there has been a termination of employment. If the person dies, yes. If there's a sale, yes. The Act is very clear that a sale brings about a termination. Now, the fact that there's a termination doesn't necessarily mean that there's a redundancy. We're going to explore that in a bit. But a termination is a necessary condition, maybe not a sufficient, but a termination is a necessary condition for a redundancy situation. All right. Any more opinions relating to the first bullet point? All workers are being offered the same terms and conditions of service. No, Diane.
No, sir, no more comments on the first.
You're whispering to me.
I said no more comments on the first one.
All right, cool. All right, good. So we're going to interrogate that later on. We'll give you the answer. Hopefully we'll come to the answers, but some good thinking. Love it. So workers in the Portmore branch will be relocated to the Stony Hill complex. Antoinette Bell, tell me what you think about that.
Sir, I don't really have any thoughts on the second point.
You're not allowed to not have any thoughts.
Sir, my thought is that I do not have any thoughts on the
That's
second
not enough to know. Nice try. Nah. Give me, no, you must have an idea. Come on.
Sir, what is the question exactly? For the
Workers in the
second one?
Portmore branch.
Time it up that because it just suffocate the fun.
Huh? Okay, sorry. That's all right. Okay, that happens. So workers in the Portmore branch will be relocated to the Stony Hill complex. You must have some feeling.
Sir, I just wanted to know what is the question surrounding that point.
You tell me what comes in your head as a result of that. The workers at the branch, you worked in Portmore, right? You are now being relocated to the Stony Hill complex after getting that circular. have you been made redundant? Do you think you're entitled to redundancy payment? Should you willingly go to Stony Hill or what?
So I don't think I should willingly go to Stony Hill.
Right.
Have I been presented with what is it? All workers are being.
Yes, sir. The business sell 2 weeks ago. Okay. No. Yes. Sell a month ago. Good. So you are so with effect from next week, we're sending you we're sending you to Stony Hill. We're closing down Portmore. Can't compete with the people in Portmore.
And this is after I've received, or they presented me with the new contract.
Yeah, well, you haven't seen any new contract yet.
So where may I go?
No, but they say to you, no, but they say to you in the circular advisors, right? So you get it in your email and you see it on the notice board. In the old days, we had notice boards.
Well, sir, those are the questions that will come to mind. I mean,
that what?
I no longer, or I will no longer work for this company. So why?
But why not? No, but the PMC, the managing director from PMC send out a circular. It's in your email, right? So it's sent to your email. So it goes to you, antoinette.bell@pmc.org, right? Good. All of you have a company generated email and you get this, but it's also on the notice board for the people who don't have internet access. So you watch this and you see this, and it says these 5 bullet points. And then it says work as a Portmore branch, and you happen to work in Portmore, right? And by you work in Portmore, but you actually live in Meadowbrook. You know where that is?
Yes, sir.
You sure I know?
Yes, sir.
Yeah? You can't find Meadowbrook from where you grew up?
Well, I live Reading, so I could probably find it a little bit easy.
No, all right, but good. So let us say you know Antoinette Bell, you live in Red Hills, but you're working in Portmore, right? Yeah. They said to you, we're moving you from Portmore because we're going to close down Portmore branch, and we're sending you now to the Stony Hill complex.
Sir, they can't send. My thought as an employee would be, okay, so they have completed, I guess, the first part of their communication and change plan as it relates to this exercise. However, I have not yet been presented with a new contract. Therefore, I am not expecting to go anywhere. I'm just expecting for them to let me know that.
Yeah, but no, you're going to be presented with the document. I mean, but they are giving you a little heads up so that when you see the circular, when you see the movement order or something, you won't be surprised.
So that's why I said they complete the first part of the plan, which is, to communicate to the wider staff.
So I'm saying to you, when you get that now, are you all right with going to put the Stony Hill complex to work?
No, I'm not all right.
All right. Why aren't you all right? What's like in your case is nearer, but then again, that might be the issue. You probably don't work so close to home.
Maybe I was looking forward to separating from the company and to find out that we're going to move. It's quite disappointing.
Yeah, no, but you can, okay, all right. That don't sound like a good enough reason, but that's all right. Montague.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
You called my name, sir.
Yes. You think it's a song by Switch? I call your name. Oh.
And I answered.
No. I'm not know anything you ask. You know that song?
No, I don't.
Before you, if you were around in 1985, you probably would know the song. And that's earlier than that, actually. It's about 1980. My gosh, I'm so old.
Wasn't around.
No, I'm certainly you weren't. I know when you were born. Yeah.
Oh, great.
No, most of you are born, yes. You think your record's private?
Yeah.
No, sir. Then you think your transcript private? Yeah. I know how many CXE subjects you have and all of that too.
I don't even know how many CXC subjects I have.
You have more than me though, I can tell you. Yeah, because I don't have any CXE subjects because CXE came in after. All right.
Anyway, sir.
All right. Yeah, man. So workers in the Portmore branch, yeah, will be relocated to the Stony Hill complex.
If you lived in Portmore, I see where it would be a problem.
Yeah.
Because your traveling expenses would increase. But as it relates to work, I guess maybe they're gonna they want you to separate from the company. Because some employees will do that to get rid of staff.
No, but they're closing the branch down. I mean, you sell the thing and they close on the branch in Portmore. They said the workers, not some workers, workers in the Portmore branch will be relocated to the Stony Hill complex. And I'm telling you that because, the PMC was already on some expansion thing and Stony Hill seems to be the new place, the new expansion center.
Oh, so there was not an office there before?
Yes, workers in the Portmore branch. There's a branch.
No. I'm saying in the Stony Hill branch. Was there a branch there before?
Yes.
So will they be at doing their same job functions?
But that's already established up top. So if you're a customer service representative or you're a sales rep or you're a gardener, right?
Doesn't that office already have gardener, sales representative and all that?
I'm sure you understand the concept of an expansion, Miss Montague.
Yes, sir, I do. I don't know what you want me to say about this question.
No, but I'm saying to you, so if you are going to, so what is going to happen at Stony Hill is that people are going to get the additional posts. So the posts which are in Portmore are going to now be in Stony Hill. So in fact, Stony Hill had 100 workers. They are now going to have 150, right? But 150 workers in the following categories: clerical officers, clerks, CSRs, gardeners, office attendants, handymen, right? Accounting clerks. Follow me? Accounting supervisor, and you name it, right? So you're going to have an expansion because the Stony Hill complex was ripe for new business.
Sir, wouldn't they have to negotiate like travel?
Why?
Travel compensation?
Why? You work in my company.
The distance is much between Portmore and Stony Hill is more than 10 miles.
I said anything about 10 miles?
I just believe that that's in the act.
Oh, you actually read the act.
Some of it.
All right. Yes. All right. Because I never said anything about 10 miles, but you did. All right. Good. Good forward thinking. So workers in the Portmore. So Portmore, is it more than 10 miles from Stony Hill?
Yes, sir. Wholly more than 10.
All right. Suppose it's Hamilton Gardens in Portmore.
Sure. Anywhere in Portmore is more than 10 miles from Kingston.
Really? It actually is, though. It's more than 10 miles. I'm being ridiculous. All right. Being contentious. All right. Good. So you've already said something that's very interesting. You've gone ahead and read the act. That's fine. I'm happy for that. So now, Chantal and Nodian, the question, and Antoinette, the question is it reasonable to move me from somewhere to another place and it is more than 10 miles? We'll get to that in a bit. Last week, we said that marketing and public relations functions are being merged. Sounds like good reasoning. Yeah, sounds fair. I mean, you're trying to, I don't see why public relations and marketing should be separate in the first instance. All right, but they do it. Good. the PR manager maintains a seniority and in regard to pay. We had that one last week. And so, as well as the other bullet point, it is now for us to understand a little bit more about what the law says regarding these two, because we examined this last week. We never did this too much. All right, good.
So Mr. Taylor,
Yes, Marsha.
in instances where like the banking sector, so where they're writing a contract that you may be assigned to a branch as necessary, how would that factor into this?
Well, if it's in your contract that you can be transferred anytime, anywhere within the organization,
yeah,
then no.
You will be obligated to take it then, or you would end up forfeiting redundancy payment then.
No, if what?
Would you be seen as being unreasonable if you turn down the offer, seeing that it's a part of your contract, and then you'd not be entitled to redundancy?
Except though that given the fact that it's a redundancy situation, I would try to argue, and I think I would successfully, that your offer is not a reasonable one, because you're trying to contract outside of the law. The law says I may be transferred at any point.
Yeah.
But what you're doing is you're saying to me, I'm being transferred for reasons of redundancy. Follow me?
Okay.
Right. So in which case, so let me see if I can illustrate that, where you might be trying to play to the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law catches you. So for example, you know that you may make a person redundant at any point in time, right? However, the maternity leave legislation says that a person who has gone off on maternity leave is entitled to return to her place of employment, place and position of employment without losing anything. Follow me?
Yeah.
So what do you now say to her? I am now terminating you during your maternity leave for purpose of redundancy. You're going to, as an employer, have to prove that the real basis for that was not the redundancy, was not the pregnancy. So the burden of proof would shift towards you.
And seeing that it's a new ownership.
Yeah,
that
it would
term and condition that is in your contract with the old owners, would that now be null and void and the act would come into play?
You know, in essence, if I'm arguing on behalf of the worker, my point would be that what the employer is attempting to do is to subvert the intentions of the act.
Yeah.
And I would fight that, you know, very, very hard.
Okay.
All right.
That's it.
All right. So rewinding a little bit, you can't dismiss a post, it becomes redundant, but a person is dismissed for redundancy. Three main bases under the act: cessation of business or the intention to cease, reduction in the requirement of labor or the intention to reduce. And a third one would be medical, that's an injury on the job or an occupational disease. But let me point out, by the way, I think I said it last time too, that the occupational disease has to be a scheduled one. Right? It has to be a scheduled one. Okay? It has to
Sorry, what that mean?
It meaning the act has a list of occupational diseases. So in 1974, when the act was passed, right, somebody had the idea that the entire set of people in parliament, those 50-odd people in parliament, they had enough sense, more than anybody else, to see into the future, to know what what all of the occupational diseases could possibly be. And they came up with a list. Follow me?
Yes.
So in other words, so in listing it now, so rather than saying occupational diseases, full stop, them just list it. So in essence, if it's not listed, then you're not entitled. But
when was that last reviewed, sir?
It has not been, but the occupational safety and health legislation now, as we speak, is looking into these. That's one of the recommendations that I made. But the Labor Advisory Committee is already looking at it anyway. All right. Are we clear here? All right, good. So if there is a cessation, if the owner is closing down, under the Act, if you sell it, you are closing down. If you die, without any question, you have closed down. And if you are ill and you dismiss the person saying that I think I'm going to die, that is it will come across as an intention to cease as well. Okay. Notwithstanding that, you may have cases of redundancy, but not every case of redundancy will come with a redundancy payment. Follow me here. Not every case of redundancy will come with a redundancy payment. Am I making sense? Not all cases of redundancy attract redundancy payment, meaning you can be made redundant, but although you're redundant, you do not get a redundancy payment. Anybody wants to hazard a guess before we move on? Under what condition, what circumstances? Sasha.
Good night, sir.
Good night.
So you wouldn't get any redundancy payment if you've been employed with the company for, what did I say again? I think it's less than 104 weeks or something like that.
What that mean? What's 104 weeks?
104 weeks. So I don't remember clearly if it's 104.
Is it 104 weeks or 2 years? I'm not sure. Which are the two?
2 years.
Is that 104 weeks?
A week's the last, sir, but I think it works back to the same thing.
Yes, I'm just being silly. I just want to know what attention you're paying. You know, it's not like 6, but it's half dozen. Yeah?
What's the question, sir?
You know, it's not like it is 6, but it's half dozen.
Yes, sir.
Aye. All right. So if you have no, that's a good one. That's a good one. Anybody want to add another guess? Another answer? Daniel, bring you in the lion's den today. Daniel? Daniel, going once, going twice. Giselle, the other one. Oh, I didn't call one already. No, Giselle Fraser, sorry.
Good evening, sir.
Yes. Not all cases of redundancy attract redundancy payment or trigger a redundancy payment.
Not quite sure.
It's all right to be unsure at this point. It's just when you just don't have the right to be unsure when you're doing the exam. So let's cure it now. Yes.
I guess
Yes,
could
and
be
she's
based on
walking.
it
She's
could be
walking.
based on contract as well.
Huh?
I guess it could be based on contract as well.
Not sure what you mean by that. Could be based on contract as well.
Based on the contract of agreement, if it's similar to, I guess it would be similar to what was it Saturday that was speaking before? If it's within a certain time frame that the contract of agreement is within, the contract of employment is within. So
so you agree not to, that you don't get any redundancy payment. That's what I mean.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That is actually so too as well, that you have agreed with your employer that you will not get a redundancy payment. You will get some kind of a, because it is, you're employed on a contract, gratuity conditions or something. So you accept that a redundancy payment is not something that comes afterwards. That is also one. I can just give it that right away. Yes. All right. Any other circumstance where a normal worker would not get redundancy payment? This is a fat topic, by the way. You're
part-time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, what if you're like a part-time worker?
Well, if you're a part-time worker, then you really wouldn't even qualify for redundancy, because in order to qualify for redundancy, you have to be a full-time worker, pretty much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right.
Sir,
Yes.
what about death?
What about death?
Yeah, what if the employee dies before anything can happen?
So if you dead before?
Yeah, before anything is finalized. Any payments?
Huh?
I'm trying to understand.
Die after which date? After which date?
So if the employee dies
When?
before any redundancy payment is done.
Before,
So there
no,
yes.
before redundancy payment or before the redundancy takes place?
Well, if they're going to be redundant, they know they're going to be redundant, but they die.
Yes.
So nobody can pay them, they're dead.
Yeah, but follow me here. You ready?
I'm following you.
All right. Has the person been dismissed?
Yes.
And after being dismissed, they died?
No, I'm trying to
what's the scenario?
It
Give
says
me a scenario. Go ahead.
I'm reading. If the employee dies before any of the above has taken place, which is the claims for redundancy payments,
yes,
personal representative has a further 6 months in which to make claim.
All right, but so you've gone, let's start at day one.
Right.
Is there a situation of redundancy?
Yes.
All right. Meaning the worker was dismissed because of redundancy, right?
Right.
And while waiting for the money, the person dies.
Right.
That's a simple case.
So they're not going to get, so somebody else can come.
Of course, then it becomes part of your property, right? Your estate. Same way that if you die, the question then is who gets your money. Now, if you're married, then your spouse gets pretty much control of that, right? Hello? And
children, and I guess they would get that.
Right. I think that it goes right. Let me say, I think it goes 50% to the spouse, and I think the rest of it goes to the children or something like that, right?
Okay.
Yes. But that is outside of labor law. That is, there's a term, I can't remember the branch of law. I should probably consult and get that. But it's another branch of law, which has to do with succession and those things, but there's a term. I can't remember what it's called now. But within labor law,
Estate, sir.
Huh? Estate law? Yeah. So whatever it is, you are entitled, you're entitled to the payment. The fact is, it's not credit union this where the debt dies with the debtor, yeah?
Okay.
No, good. So make it clear now. You see, if me drop down heaven forbid it happens, right? But if the law takes me home now and the university have some retroactive money from him, I tell you right now that I want my money. Right? I'm a picnic, must get it. The picnic must get it, and my wife must get it. Follow me? So even if there's a case going on, right, and the case is not resolved, and I die in the middle of the case, when it is resolved and discovered that the university owed me some serious money or something, fine. However, you get me?
Yes, sir, I'm getting you.
All right, yeah, man, good. Right, so I hope I answered that question. There are other scenarios where, though, you are not entitled to a redundancy payment. And I will take another answer before I continue.
Sir?
Yes.
Okay, just remembering a case. So the entity was going through a merger and there was I guess there's a date, the effective date of the redundancy. But the officer, one of the persons that got a job, so they wanted to resign. But if they resign, they won't get the redundancy payment based on the effective date. So
say it again.
So the person wanted to resign during the redundancy. I don't know.
Exercise.
Right.
Yeah, if you resign, you're not entitled to anything.
Right. So I was just saying that's a scenario that I know.
Yeah, don't resign, man. If so what's the follow redundancy around? You've been up in another company a long time, stay.
So, right. So they had to wait until the effective date and then take up the job offer.
Yeah. You see, for me, no, me bad mind. Eh? Make sure I'll keep up on all the listeners about you one at the department. I wouldn't do that, but I'm saying people have actually done that, knowing that they have redundancy exercises. And out of real spite, they do not send home the person, that one individual who will be getting a lump sum to move on, and they know that the person will be moving on to a better job somewhere else. They just keep the person there, make everybody around him or her redundant and do nothing about it. But God don't like ugly. These are things have a way of coming to affect you later on in life. So I don't. All right. So let me continue now. So you are, if the new employer or the same employer offers you the same or better terms and conditions of employment, right? So if the same employer offers you employment in the same company or a subsidiary, right? Same. So let me give you an example. So if PMC is closing down Portmore branch and they're offering you the same position within the Stony Hill branch, right? Or the Halfway Tree branch, right? Or the Central branch, no, Central branch at primary school, but yeah, or the Mango Tree branch, right? Or any branch they want to send you to, then you may, not there yet, you may be disqualified from redundancy or redundancy payment. Similarly, if you are given an offer of re-engagement by a survivor of the dead person under the same or better terms and conditions of employment, right? And of course, if the person was not employed for 2 consecutive years, right? So if you're employed for a 5-year period, but they keep on breaking it up more often than here without conditioner, then that person, even though you have worked 5 years, you never worked 2 consecutive years in the whole thing, and then you, yes, will be made redundant, but you would not have worked 2 consecutive years, and thus you're redundant, but no redundancy payment. Am I making sense? Is that clear?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, let me see if I have an answer.
For persons
You're not showing up though. Who's that?
Chantal here.
Oh, okay.
For persons on 1-year contract, but it's renewed every year, would that be you working?
Renewed every year, and at the end of the year, you get any money?
Oh, yes, usually they do get something at the end of the year.
Okay, I think you answered it. There's a break, so you get a gratuity at the end of the contract, and you get something to start the next year, right?
Right.
If you don't get anything at all, right, then you are deemed to have continued working, right? So I suppose that's the difference between continuous and continual.
Sir, if they don't get gratuity, but just a smaller bonus.
What's that? Bonus?
Yeah.
It depends on what it's, no, I don't know what that means because.
All right, so I'm
Just a
looking
second.
at some contracts now.
Hold on, please. You can get a bonus based on profit sharing arrangements every year.
No, it's not. It is in the contract that you get 1 month salary at the end of your 1 month salary at the end of your contract period. That's a bonus.
Huh?
Say that again.
What is it? What is it called? What is a bonus? But how is it measured? What is it supposed to be?
I'm not sure. Just say bonus.
Oh, okay. Can I tell you the word in itself, bonus? Suggests that there is no legal entitlement, because bonus comes from the Latin, which means good. So that's something that you give freely. So, like when they tell you, me get my Christmas bonus, it's not something that's in your contract. They just give it, you get it, and you get a little thing. Now, if it is really not a bonus, but it is a gratuity, but I'd have to see the letter of the contract to figure what it really is. But if it is a terminal thing, a terminal payment that you get, right? If it is connected to the end of the contract, as opposed to the end of the year. With me?
Yeah.
Right.
It
can be.
Sir, it's kind of weird. Let me tell you. It says 5% with it. 1 month bonus at the end of the period, and you get a 5% if you want to increase, if you want to sign a new contract. A 5% increase to sign a new contract.
That sounds like, for me, that sounds like continued employment though, but yeah, on the surface of it, it would sound, and it would, in my opinion, I think it's dangerous because the person, for the employer anyway, because you'll be paying the person redundancy payment after each contract. And ultimately you might still find yourself liable to it. But I'd have to see the actual letter itself, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. And
an attorney will draft this in a series. When I was reading,
just a second, and your tuition fee doesn't cover that. That's private consultancy. Nice try. Anyway, all right. So I think, sorry. So what I'm doing here, I'm reprising stuff that we had talked about anyway, right? So if you got a new offer or the same, so if the same employer gives you continued employment in the same company or a similar company. So if Lasco Marketing, but not them of marketing, yeah, Lasco distribution, right, distribution, closes down or reduces its staff complement and send you to manufacturing in a similar position, then you're not entitled to redundancy. If you work with NCB and they send you to NCB Insurance, for example, it probably would not be if it's similar. If you work with you know, if you work with, I don't know, can't think of, I'm a little hungry, not, so I can't really think of another example, right? But if you, but follow me. So if you work with one particular place and they open a branch, good. So you work with Juicy and they move their clothes on a Juicy store, they send you somewhere else. Or you work with one of the Azan superstore and them say, well, they're sending you to the other branch of Azan's or something, you know, or you discover, I don't know if it's true, but you discover that Azan and Bashko are the same company, right? And they've decided they're going to send you away from Azan and send it out to Bashko. You might not like it, but you'll go. Good.
Sir,
Yeah, go ahead.
sir, but when they send you from Bashko to Azan, will they be giving you the same pay, or will the nature of the job be the same?
Same thing is just that you're going to have a different clientele now.
Okay.
Right? Because the people who would go to Azan's in Sovereign are going to come in and say, could you tell me how much this is for? And they're like, all right. And when they jack up the price, and they say, well, all right, can I have two? While, you know, one in Bashko said, but no, man, a thief this, that. Right? And the crowd in Bashko is usually a little rougher, I think, right? But it's still the same Jamaican. So if you have the level of flexibility, fine. But there are some people who are just less comfortable. So, you know, there are people who have issues being, you know, like they would never want to work at, say, the Burger King. The Burger King on not King Street, on Harbor Street, right? Even though it's nearer to the yard, but because they like working out to the airport, and the airport is a much more controlled environment and stuff, and people behave differently and usually better, not always, but usually, and those kinds of things. All of those offers by the new employer are reasonable, and if you refuse that, now I'm sure you can't, that if the employer dies suddenly, you can't expect that he would give you an offer of renewed employment, right, at any time. But if the survivor, the son, the heir, or whomever decides to keep you on under the same terms and conditions. So when Mas John died, when it is now public that Mas John has died, the son now, who's now running the estate, says, well, you know what? I'm going to keep you on to take care of the property here, same way, yeah? All right, so same term, same condition of employment, etc. The difference though is that, please don't call me Mas John, eh? My name is John Jr., rather, not Junior. Junior is a lawyer, who's my friend. Right.
So, sir.
Go ahead.
And on the flip side now, if the conditions are the same in terms of the job requirements or so, but maybe the salary is different, a bit lower. All right, what if you're going to do, say you do marketing, sir? Yeah. And they're gonna put you, they want to make you redundant, but they don't want to make the payment. So they decided to put you in a different marketing department in one of the subsidiary companies. And the salary being offered is lower.
No, but you answered the question already.
No, I asked it a different way, sir.
No, you can't, because what I'm saying, you answered it already. Sasha, you asked, listen, if you decide now that you're going to drop my button and give me a smaller button, I don't care what else you're telling me, you can't give me less money. Okay. You offer me less money, that's not the same.
Unreasonable. Okay.
That's not the same. That's not the same terms. If you let me tell you how. So if you offer me additional perks, but a reduction in my basic pay, right? Okay. It's not a reasonable offer. Right? No, it's not. You can't tell me to take home less money because I might decide not to take those perks. So, for example, if I work in a hotel and you are saying, well, here's what you can get. We are going to give you a continued employment in one of the other branches that offers other kinds of things. And at the end of every month, you have access to the spa, right? You have access to the spa and a full day in the spa, one day and whatever. Now, I might not want to go to the spa because I don't want a strange woman rubbing on my body. And by the way, that's just true. I ain't been that fool. I don't want to go. So you might think it's a perks for you. I don't know. Well, you know, you have extra tickets given to the ice cream place, but I don't eat ice cream. Or those kinds of things. No, give me my money. That money, don't shout me by even $1. If you can't give me the same pay, then give me the lump sum and let me go somewhere else. Now, the person may take the offer, you know, but it doesn't mean that it is reasonable, because sometimes in the power dynamics, people will bow depending on who is more powerful. But let's bow out for about a minute or two, about 5 minutes, or maybe 10. I know you might want to walk around a little bit. For those of you who are standing by your door waiting to get in, or to take a little opportunity to see what's going on with the youngster, do that. I'll be here. If, right, you're not entitled to redundancy payment if the offer is unreasonable. So it must be the same with no loss of seniority. It is not enough to say that the person is getting the same emoluments, right, and benefits. If the individual, sorry, has to go lower in the hierarchy, has to report to somebody she never had to before, that is not a reasonable offer. It is in fact a demotion. That is settled law. I think there's a case called Taylor versus Kent. I remember that very clearly. Taylor, it wasn't me, but Kent. I remember that. You'll have to look that one up. There were two schools that were being merged, and one of the principals was relegated to being the vice principal. Ultimately, it was decided that no, it's not a reasonable offer. We return to the issue of original position. The ETRP Act is very clear. It says that the offer of continued employment, right, must be within, right, they must, the employment rather, not the offer, the employment must be within a 10-mile radius of the original position. That is, if it's 10.2 miles, then it is not a reasonable offer. Follow me here. And Antoinette, I'm coming back to you because I remember your concerns and questions. The issue is not where you live, right? The issue is where you work. So the employer should not think for you and say, oh, but think about it. You live in Spanish Town. No, not Spanish Town. You live in Stony Hill, all right? Or you live in Stony Hill. No, you can't walk to work. I don't want to work. I purposefully took the job in Portmore so I can be away from my mother. I'm a young person just started working. No, I don't want my mother to come over to the plant and carry lunch for me, right? So that when the little girl over there in the office like me, my mother starts, I say, at lunchtime every day coming out on the street with that. No, I don't want that. So I make a decision that I'm going to go to Portmore, right? I don't want to work the same place where I live. So even though the new position being offered is located within walking distance or driving distance or a short or stone's throw of where I live, that is not an issue for me. right? Finally, the persona of the new employer might be important but insignificant. What do I mean by here? You might, yes, you want to know who the new employer is. You need to get an opportunity to know who the new employer is. However, if the only reason why you are rejecting the offer is because you don't like the new employer, tough, then yes, you are made redundant, but you are not entitled to a redundancy payment. So let me start again. Give you a real example. So you work with employer A. The business is sold to employer B. Employer A is Christian and employer B is Rastafari. Good. So you sell the place to a Rastaman. Now, if the only thing that you don't like is that the man is a Rastaman, then go about your business. Then what's in effect there is a resignation, right? It's a resignation, not anything else. It's a resignation. Good. Am I making myself clear so far? Hello?
Repeat that, sir.
I'm saying to you, if your employer if the new employer sends you a message, sorry, if this new employer is different, and that's the only thing that you don't like about him, okay? If the only thing you don't like about your new employer is the fact that he's a different person, then sister and brethren, tough. Then tough. Call it quits. Forget it. Just a second, please. Yes, I think somebody's attempting to call me. I need to stop that call. Right. So let me start again. If you have a new employer and the only thing that's different is that the employer is new, then you can reject the offer, but rejecting the offer is tantamount to rejecting the offer is tantamount to a resignation. Am I making myself clear now?
Clear.
Sir, can you repeat that, please?
Huh?
What you just said?
Huh?
I was asking you to repeat what you just said.
All right, I'm saying to you, right? I'm saying to you here that the new employer, if he offers you the same employment and the only reason why you don't want it is because you don't want to work with a new employer, you have no right to redundancy. You have no right to a redundancy payment. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right, good. So the offer must be reasonable, but it cannot be unreasonable simply because the individual is somebody you don't like. All right, good. I have another one now, and this one is layoff. Layoff is something that people have been preoccupied over, and there's a lot of gray area regarding layoff. So follow me here. Layoffs are not basis for redundancy because you're laid off, and it's not a basis for redundancy until you are dismissed. A layoff is not a dismissal. There's a case, Samuel Prendergast, that made it clear that no matter how long the layoff is, it's not a dismissal. However, the 19, I think 80, what is it? 85 or 86 amendment of the Employment Termination and Redundancy Payment Act puts us a limit of 120 days. And so after this 120 days, the worker may claim on the employer to dismiss him. Now, here the employer has no choice but to dismiss the worker for redundancy. However, the dismissal is not immediate. The dismissal shall take place between 14 and 60 days. When that dismissal takes place, right? When that dismissal takes place, then the employer becomes liable for redundancy payment. Questions, because I'm sure we have a lot of questions regarding here. Open your mics. First question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, it's not really a big question. I just wanted to know if this is similar to a furlough in the US.
Huh?
Is layoff similar to furlough in the US?
Yes, yes, yes. Very
Okay.
similar to a furlough, yes.
Okay.
Yes, very similar. All right. So you lived in the US, did you?
No, sorry, it's just that a lot of it was happening during the especially last year. There was a lot of news around that a lot of persons were being furloughed. So when I read this, it just brought back that.
Yes.
That reading.
It's a term that comes from the army, from the military rather, where you are removed from active duty for a while, you're sent away, but you are not dismissed. And it's kind of like a leave, but it is in the army, I think it's an unpaid leave. But I think in the army it's paid leave. I'm not quite sure. I think it's yes. But it's a term I've seen used most often in the airline industry. And people opt to do it rather than lose their jobs. And there are benefits to taking the layoff, by the way, because you continue. So let's say for example, you worked 4 years and let's say whatever, 4 years and a few months, right? And you are now being laid off. But during that period of layoff, your 5th year of employment will trip in. And after 5 years, you are then entitled to a different slate of benefits. So you take your time and you suck up those weeks or those days or those months of layoff, and then you come back to work. So, and during this layoff period, by the way, you can be dismissed, and not for redundancy. Hear me? Hello? You can do things during this period of layoff where you can actually be fired. So if while you are on layoff from the Gleaner, you take on a job with the Observer, it could be the basis for dismissal, right? Or if you work with JN, and while you're on that layoff, you take a job with VMBS, then because they are so close, then it can be deemed to be such a conflict of interest that you should be dismissed during the period. There are something that you are not supposed to do because you are still a member of staff. Because when you're on layoff, you do not necessarily have to give up everything. You are still on staff. And you can be called back at any point in time, unless, of course, you have a provision in your contract that speaks about call-out pay. In some contracts, some collective labor agreements, there are provisions that say, right? There are provisions that say when you're going to be called back to work, the employer must do so, but give you an X amount of time, right?
So, sir, question. So when you're laid off, are you given, is there some conversation that's had in relation to where you can work versus where you can't work, or what you can do during that period of layoff for employment?
It may, but I'm saying many of these things are just common law provisions, meaning determined by years of adjudication in the courts, you know, for decades, for maybe even over a century, as to what you may or may not do while you're not at work, because it is easy for you to have a conflict of interest and during that period when you're off, to such an extent that your employer could not reasonably bring you back. Are you with me?
Yes, sir. And the employer is the one who determines that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, because good. So I'm saying to you that you could do things though during the period that would trigger a dismissal. Right? So because you are still an employee of the company and you are therefore still expected to. So let me give you another example. Any kind of misconduct. So you're a flight attendant. Good example. You're a flight attendant and you're on furlough. Good. You are on layoff for 6 months. During that 6 months, you decided you're going to fly to Jamaica, right? And in Jamaica, you're seen on video cussing bad word, or you're so drunk in a hotel and they see you winding up on the table and all of that, to half dressed and stuff like that. They figured, well, you have carried out a pattern of behavior that violates the code of conduct of the organization, and then you are dismissible and they fire you, even though you get no redundancy because you're dismissed for misconduct. That is clear cut. So yes. Yeah, you get caught up you are driving your vehicle. True, you're poor. You're poor now because you can't pay your bills. We understand that you're broke. Yeah, you're broke, you can't pay your bills. We get it, you can't pay the bills. So you're driving your vehicle uninsured. But guess what? You're a salesperson. All right, the same sales vehicle, and you're driving it uninsured, and you're driving it unlicensed, and then boy, it so happen that them seize the vehicle. And it comes out that the police seize the vehicle because it just so happens that seize your vehicle for you're operating illegally. The employer said, well, you can't represent us as a sales agent anymore, and then fire you, and that would be reasonable. So during a period of layoff, you are still an employee and you're expected to represent the company. You're still expected to comply with the terms and conditions of employment that you had before. You are not dismissed. Dismissal is something that an employer does. But so in a normal case scenario where you don't misbehave yourself, the employer can lay you off for 120 days. And after the so he can lay you off for 119 days. He brings you back, lays you off again for another 119 days, brings you back, lays you off again for another 119 days, and keeps on treating you like a sefe, abe, that kind of thing that we say as children. I don't ever encourage you to do this because of the larger social impact it will have. But there are some, yes?
When they take you back before that 120 days, there are a particular period they have to take you on. So it can be just a 1 day and you're gone.
Yep. Legally it can be done. Morally it should not be done. So I'm just, please don't. I was having kittens as to whether or not I should actually teach you this tonight. Please don't let me regret it.
It's all over in the news.
That what?
That notion that happens when we were doing our assignment, we came across a lot.
Yeah, they bring you back from, yeah, but
that's some unscrupulous employers do that.
It is that bad that you can bring them back for 120 days? You hear me say?
Yes, sir.
120, you know. I mean 119. So in fact, you can have the person working maybe 3 days out of the entire year. You get me? I mean, it is doable, but I'm asking you not to do it. Now, sometimes you might be put in a position where, because you're not senior enough, then you may be forced to do it because your managing director or general manager says to you to do it. But please don't be the one to volunteer this, because, and even if you're given the instruction, if they'll be willing to listen, say, don't, you know, this is not a good thing to do. Now, follow me. A worker may realize though that a period of layoff beyond 120 days may be in his or her interest. Again, this is a case where you may have the trigger, but don't necessarily feel that you should squeeze it. You have your right, but don't necessarily mean that you must give up the right. Sorry, that you must exercise the right. Because you may have a good relationship with your employer and you truly recognize that the company is going through a difficult period, and going through this difficult period, right? What you're expecting is that you're going to ride out the storm along with the employer. Ride out the storm with the employer, and then at the end of the day, at the end of the period, you will see the benefits that come with it. And those things do happen, especially in companies where you have good relationship between employers and workers, and people have open management. You know, people reason with each other. They're not trying to be dishonest, etc. So in essence, bearing in mind the fact that the company, you know, a good employer, good supervisor, good manager says, look here, the law says 120 days. And you have the right to claim to be dismissed with effect after this 120 days. That's your right. But you know that the numbers are trending down. The COVID numbers are trending down. The positivity rate is trending down as well. And you're hearing the minister saying that they're reopening certain sectors. They're reopening some places for face-to-face. They've already reopened COVID, the hotel, and you see that we can start up at the chicken business, etc. You can see that. Now, I can't go back 100, but I figure that by the time we get to down in July, we might be able to open your category again. Good. But so I'm asking you to, well, I'm asking you to not exercise your right to be dismissed after 120 days. No, some people are just hot. No, man, the last 120 days, may I exercise my right? No, the law says a worker may, not a shall, a worker may. The worker may, but the employer shall. Meaning, the worker may go to the employer and say to the employer, I am asking you to make me redundant, at which point the employer has no choice. He has no choice. He has to make you redundant. The only discretion he has is to when the redundancy takes place. That is the dismissal. The dismissal shall take place either 14 days after you ask him, right, at a lower level, or 60 days after. So you have that 40 to 60 day window within which the dismissal has to take place. I'm saying to you though, that the employee does not have an obligation, right? He's not forced to exercise this 120-day right, right? Again, it's one of those cases where, you know, you have a right, but does it make sense? Does it benefit me to exercise my right? Because you could be penny wise and pound foolish. But again, many of these things depend on the relationship that you may have with your company, right, or your employer. And decent work is something that people don't run from. Do I have any questions? Do I have any questions?
The payment of the redundancy amount, right?
Yeah.
There are particular period within which it must be paid.
Yeah, I'm not there yet though. I'm not there yet.
Okay.
I just want to be sure that you understand this layoff questions.
Yeah.
Questions only regarding layoff right now, please. Not payment.
Okay.
Yeah. Only, right. So there is something, this thing about the indefinite frequency of the layoff is something that I find very, very repugnant to, very, very, very sad. But under the Barbados Severance Payment Act, you can't get away with doing that, okay? Yeah, you would not be able to get away with doing that. There's a limited number of times that you can make, you send a work off on layoff during, I think, a 6-month period. Good. There's no limit as to the number of layoffs under the period. Any final questions on layoff? None. Good. By the way, remember that the redundancy takes place not on the day that you were laid off, but on the day that you were finally dismissed. That is somewhere between this 14 and the 60 here, somewhere between here and here. Okay, good. So here's your question now, Marsha. And I think it also matches a question that was being asked as well by, was it Antoinette or Nadia? I don't remember. But the question is, how soon must you claim your redundancy payment after you have been dismissed for redundancy? How soon must you claim after you have been made redundant? Well, how soon? 6 months. If you don't claim within 6 months, you lose it. Good. And this is one of the inequities in the law. The employee must claim within 6 months, but the employer has no upper limit as to when to pay. The rule of thumb, the practice at the Ministry of Labor is that you have 1 year within which to pay. However, there is no statute, there's no part of the statute that says that you have to. None. So if you don't claim your redundancy payment within 6 months, you get nothing. You lose it forever and ever. But the employer can go on ad infinitum. So there's no upper limit of a year. The ministry tells you that you have a year, but it's not true. And the information is out there. There are some unscrupulous experts who tell the employers that they don't have to. And that has to change, because it is an awful way of robbing people. I'm asking you again not to do it. Right? Good. Final frontier for this evening: redundancy and the sanctity of notice. Now you will understand that notice is something that must be given. right? And at common law, where you don't give proper notice, and even within that statute, you don't give proper notice, then usually there are other kinds of penalty. So, you know, like when you have a wrongful dismissal versus an unlawful dismissal, which, right, or lawful dismissal, what makes a dismissal rightful or lawful is when the appropriate notice is given. Good? So you must give notice. So where you are made redundant, right, or dismissals period under the Act, there's a sliding scale that links your years of service to the amount of notice that you're entitled to. So the range is 2 weeks at the bottom and 12 weeks up top. But if your contract says you must get a higher period of notice, then you should get that higher period of notice, or that's longer period of notice. Okay? Dismissal. And I hope you understand that. Anybody has any questions there? No. Now, this is not about whether the dismissal is justifiable or unjustifiable or anything like that. Not right. I'm talking about it being rightful, lawful, or rightful or lawful, or wrongful or lawful, right? Notice, if not given, should only be not given if there's cause. That is, you can dismiss somebody because they misconducted themselves. If the person has not misconducted themselves, the person is always going to be entitled to notice. But notice in redundancy matters also has a greater impact. The law, the Act, the ETRP Act says, an employee shall not be entitled to redundancy payment by reason of dismissal if before the relevant date, the employer has made to him an offer in writing to renew his contract of employment or to engage him under a new contract. Stop and observe this one. An employee shall not be entitled to a redundancy payment by reason of dismissal if before the relevant date the employer has made to him an offer in writing to renew his contract of employment or to engage him under a new contract. Think now about the case in retrospect. Think about the case. Everybody awake? Giovanni?
Yeah, man, I'm here.
You sure? Yeah. All right. Think about it. Think about the case. Think about it now. Rewind. As it has this particular section of the Act shedded any light on you?
Yes, sir. The circular was the notice.
When was the circular sent?
A month after.
Huh?
A month after.
A month when?
After.
A month after the company was sold, I think.
All right. So what it says, the circular says the company has been sold. Has been. So you understand the dilemma here now, don't? No offer was made before. And right now, by the way, the Employment Termination Redundancy Payment Act has made it clear that the Ministry of Labor at all times shall be advised prior to any redundancy exercise. Right. So yeah, I'm working on a monograph for that, by the way. So hopefully that will be out next for the next cohort, assuming that I can catch up. So I will encourage you that you should buy it anyway. Pretty much a kind of handbook on termination. A lot of people don't get it because you're still going to have to be going back to the law each time. So there is this common view that as long as the offer is reasonable and you're going to continue. But it's disrespectful. You think about it, gentlemen and ladies. Why should you, the employer, make up my mind for me? Right? Suppose I had already decided that, listen, me a Christian, me not gonna work for the Rastaman. Me don't want to work for the Rastaman, you know, me not whatever. So you had me working for a Rastaman for a month. You had me working for a Rastaman for a month. I didn't want to work for a Rastaman. You took that away from me because a cardinal principle of a person being an adult must be that I shall have the right to make a wrong decision. As long as my decision is not unlawful, I, as an adult, have the right to make a wrong decision. You can't make that a wrong decision for me. But you must give me the information. You can't give me the information after the fact and say, well, no. So the fact that you did not advise me that there was a change in the employer, right? Or that there was a sale, because you were negotiating the sale, you know. And the sale doesn't take place overnight. So as you were negotiating the sale, you say, listen, workers, here's the scenario. This is what obtains. Ray, blah, blah, blah. This is what obtains. You speak to me. You don't tell me after the fact that, guess what? I sold the thing and I sold your labor too. And you have to just follow suit. The act is very explicit. Now, follow me here, people. I'm telling you what the law says, not what you should necessarily practice. Because you may decide to exercise your right and then you end up with nothing. So you may have the right, but is it prudent for you to exercise your right to say, listen, the offer was not made in time. I'm entitled to a redundancy payment. Now, in a case where you really, really wanted to go, then I would just jump on it and say, yeah, man, it was never made, the offer was never made before. It was never made before. And since it wasn't made before, it cannot be reasonable. Because a big part of things being reasonable must be noticed. Reasonable means you give me an opportunity to reason it out, to think through it. Am I making sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Questions. And I want you to flash back to the case study to see if you have any additional concerns.
So what if you had been just called into an office, right? And what if you have been called into an office, given a letter right on spot, and you're asked to make a decision right away?
Make a wish this is
Is there a time limit as to whether you'll accept the offer before the time? So like 2 days before they call you in, or you have to tell us now?
You know, the law says you must give the person reasonable notice.
Okay.
But before a dismissal. Follow me?
Yeah.
Now, if you don't give the person reasonable notice, then you have to give them notice pay. So if your employer says, tomorrow, I'm making you redundant tomorrow. Fine, them can make you redundant tomorrow, but them have to come get some money for notice. Huh?
And if they make you the offer and tell you that you have to tell them no while you're sitting in front
That
of
what?
them.
Which offer? That what?
They're giving an offer for a similar position or a lesser position.
No, they can't give
And
a
you have
lesser
to make the
position. They
decision.
cannot offer you a lesser position and you take it. If they offer you a lesser position, they must give you a redundancy pay. And then offer you the new and decide if you want to take it.
They try to people who don't know better, sir.
Yeah, but it's a power dynamic. So they will say, listen, and so when you sign those contracts for a lesser anything, it has an impact on you later on down the road when you to get a pension and stuff like that, because them effectively reduce your salary and you agree to it.
Yeah.
Right. So nothing wrong in the short term making a sacrifice for your company with the full understanding that, listen, this is not my basic. I will accept the 14% reduction in salary, knowing fully well that that is not my base pay. In fact, the company owes me 14%, which I expect the company will give it back to me at some point when it becomes solvent. But the company might decide, well, we're not really solvent and think, but we're going to bring you back to the 100. You want to keep the work, you say yes to that. But the truth is, having accepted a temporary reduction, depending on what the language looks like, right? Language of the contract or the letter. 15% reduction, 14% reduction, yes, it's temporary. Knowing fully well that in another year when the company is back on its feet, I am back at this. So if I'm offered those things and I have a wiggle room, I have the right to argue, then I argue. But in some cases, you just don't. And it's a power dynamic. And then you just have to take your hand out of the lion's mouth very slowly. Okay? And I prefer the lion analogy, not crocodile or alligator. Right? All right. Do I have any question on this apart from Marsha? Anybody else? None? All right. Let's continue a little bit. So let me say this before I go on, though. The law is very clear that you cannot offer somebody a renewal of contract retroactively after the sale has taken place. You should be able to say to the workers, listen, we are going to, do you want to stay? If you haven't done that, and there's a case, I think it's a Waterford plantation case in Barbados. I don't remember so clearly, but I think that's what it is. Now, just a second. All right. This is the last one. The sanctity of notice. Now, where you have a renewal or engagement, hear me? It should take place on or before the relevant date, but not less than 2 weeks after that date. Meaning, we're going to give you a new contract or continued contract tomorrow. This is a scenario where there's a sale, and this is a scenario where there is death. So if you die, and if your employer dies and his heir, successor, or whomever offers you a continuation of your contract on the terms and conditions of employment that are similar or better, the renewal or re-engagement has to take place, on the day that the person died. Obviously not, right? Because people are mourning and stuff like that. So you have up to 2 weeks in which to do it. But the offer has to be made, especially when it comes to a sale, right? Right, when it comes to a sale. Do I have any questions? Do I have any questions?
So the case that we looked at Mr.
Yeah,
Taylor.
let me go right back up because I'm gonna go right back up to the case, and we'll finish. So I just want to be sure that everybody understands what we are saying here.
Okay.
We're good? All right, let me go back up to the case. Here we are. So here are the definitive answers. Now, I'm telling you what the law says and not necessarily what is the most prudent thing to do. You know, in a case where jobs are hard to get, etc., the most prudent thing to do is to keep your job. Yeah. But clearly, from a straight legal point of view, in bullet point 1, the workers being offered the same conditions and terms of employment really is not sufficient, right? It means that the offer was not reasonable because the offer must be made, the offer shall be made before the relevant date, not after. Right? It shall be made before the relevant date. Good? The workers in the Portmore branch, so that is one, meaning that already everybody is entitled to a redundancy payment because the ETRP Act has been breached. That's in law. In practice, do you want to exercise that right? Maybe not. I wouldn't encourage you to necessarily. But you want to see what it is that's in store because sometimes the new employer doesn't agree really. And then when you're getting redundant payments later on, then the employer says, well, listen, I don't know about that, you know, and you can't force it because in any event, he has an indefinite period within which to pay. So I believe that the government needs to tighten up the ETRP legislation here a little bit. And which is why I'm very happy that under the Act, the employer has an obligation to engage the Ministry of Labor before all so that you can avoid this foolishness. The workers in the Portmore branch being relocated to Stony Hill would be, and even if it were timely, would be unreasonable. You understand that? Even if the offer were made timely and all of that, the workers in the Portmore branch can't be relocated to 10 miles outside of where they normally go. And as I said before, don't let anybody tell you that they made the decision for you because they know that you live in certain places and that none of the people in the Portmore branch, because the Portmore people have to commute. Yeah. You know, as somebody said last week, commuting to Portmore is one of the nicest things, yeah, in the morning, right? Because if when I'm going out of town and I'm driving along the highway, you know, when I'm going east, we call it east-west highway, yeah, the PJ Patterson, and I'm looking over, no, but even at 5 o'clock in the morning, the traffic is so long coming out of Portmore. And I asked myself the question, oh my gosh, really? So it might be a nice little ride in. And when you're coming from Portmore in the evening, it's a nice ride out. The traffic you're going to encounter when you're in town. You know, and in any event, it's Harbor View you live. So you go in the upper, so who knows? I don't know. I mean, so again, the issue of public relations and marketing is a perfect management prerogative. There is no issue there. You can't tell management how to manage. They make the decision that they are going to manage. And so they have actually managed and closed one particular section. PR and marketing are compatible. So general set of similar skill sets, sales, marketing, public relations, put the whole thing together, it all depends. However, Taylor versus Kent, PR manager, you lose your PR marketing, PR manager loses her seniority. Never mind what they tell you, right? You lose your seniority the moment you have to report to somebody else, right? So money and other emoluments are really not enough to compensate. And those are the issues in a nutshell relating to redundancy and termination that I want to teach you today. Do we have any questions? Wake up. Wake up.
Sure. So what I'm trying to understand is if the redundancy announcement was not done according to the act, that is giving the workers ample notice.
Yes.
Based on the time that they worked within the organization. That's the only condition that redundancy is when it comes to a sale. That's the only condition that you can be made redundant. Under sale.
No. But I'm saying to you, the first thing that has to take place is that the workers must be given appropriate notice.
Yes.
Now, redundancy is applicable the moment the sale is made. Right? So the moment the business is sold, you are made redundant. You are dismissed.
Okay.
Because the sale is a breach, a break of the contract with the first person. I never contracted with owner 2. I have a contract with owner 1. And owner 1 says, I am selling. So the moment that sale triggers a break. Right? It triggers a break. Now, it triggers a break, then if it triggers a break, then automatically, since it's a sale, and you're having a sale is a cessation of business, it means that by selling the business, you have already made the workers redundant. Because it's a dismissal because of cessation of business. It's a dismissal for redundancy. So the persons have been made redundant. But being redundant doesn't mean that you're going to be entitled to a redundancy payment. The employer says.
Okay. I think that was the part that was confusing me.
Says you are redundant, but I now have 2 weeks in which to offer you a renewed employment. But I can't, having gone behind your back, no, come and tell you this foolishness that I sold the business, and it's, no, you're out of order. So no, keep your job. Give me redundancy money. Because you never gave me the time to consult with myself and my wife and my picnic them and see whatever, to see whether or not I want to continue working. And the law says you must give me reasonable notice for the engagement. Don't tell me that you gave me a job retroactively because you sold the business in last month. Yeah, man. No. So you sell the business and everybody's made redundant. But yes, you're redundant, but are you entitled to redundancy payment? No, not quite. Because my son now has bought has taken over the business, or I've died, my son takes over the business, or I've ceased operations in Portmore, but having ceased operations in Portmore, I continue to operate. So I know I'm moving the Portmore people to Spanish Town. That's a reasonable offer. It's not 10 miles. Well, it all depends, eh? No, there's no way in Spanish. No, it all depends on where you call Spanish Town, because if it's out by Green Acres, it's will be 10 miles if you're coming from Bayside. Not so? I'm sure. Yeah, of course. Good. But whichever way. So you may be given a new offer, but the new offer must fit within certain parameters. And the most important parameter is time and timeliness. And outside of those parameters now of timeliness, then everything else comes in. Is the person getting the same salary, same set of benefits? Is the seniority of the person being maintained? And in the absence of that of seniority, no. Don't tell me you're merging the Department of Government and you're matching and all you have now that the person who's the head of department. No, that would be easier. You're merging Faculty of Social Sciences and Faculty of Humanities, but the Dean of Humanities now must report to will maintain seniority, but must now report to the Dean of Social Sciences because Social Science is bigger. You know, right? You're merging, I don't know. It's just, don't tell me that you're going to maintain my seniority. You know, I remember some years ago, the university merged, I think, appointments and something else. And I don't remember how that went, but that was a little before my time. But these things happen from time to time. You want to be sure that the offer is made reasonably. Well, no, that is a reasonable offer and it's made reasonably. Do we have anything else to say?
Sir, I have a small question.
Let me get
right. So, for example, if you have like a marketing assistant, right, sir? And that person does a specific amount of task, and then you create a new position for the marketing. And then after that, sir, so you already have a marketing assistant hired. And you, the employer, go ahead, create a new position for a marketing officer. And that vacancy is filled, sir, but the officer does the same thing, the exact same thing that the marketing assistant is required to do. Wouldn't you view that as being unethical if you're going to say in the future that you're going to make the marketing assistant position redundant?
Yes, I mean, it's unethical, but not unlawful.
To say that the work has diminished?
Huh?
To say that there's no longer a need for
the additional for this person. So you create an additional post, right? And then having created additional post, you then say that you're going to do a reduction of employment and get rid of a post that existed before.
Right, but they do basically the same duties, sir.
No, basically it's the same. It might not be the same because the employer always has the jurisdiction to make a decision in which he believes is best in the interest of the company. Okay. So he has a right to make the company flop. There's no penalty for being a stupid employer, stupid entrepreneur, stupid businessman. You understand?
Okay, sir.
Only if you are doing things illegal. Because remember, businesses, management has a right to manage. That's why you have good and bad managers.
That's true.
Yeah.
But looking at it, like looking at the job duties, sir, the work wouldn't necessarily diminish. It would be like a restructure. They just do it on that style.
Yeah, and that's a clever way of doing it as well. Okay, because then who would come from outside and make a judgment that you're not having a real restructuring?
That's true.
All right. So, any more questions? No more questions? I can say to you, you can go and have your dinners.
Okay, sir.
Ward isn't here today. I didn't hear her, right? No.
I was to tell her she wasn't gonna make it.
All right, you just have to tell me now. Done.
Yeah, sorry.
See, I do notice here.
Yes.
And if this were face to face, I would know everyone out by face. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your evening. Bless you all. Thank you. See you
You
next
too.
week.
Good night.
All right.
Night, night.
Thank you. Night,
See you
night.
then, sir.
Good night. Good night, sir.
Good night, Dr. Taylor.
Ta-da, 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 ta-da.